Good morning, all of you. Today, we are going to discuss an Afro-American writer, Maya Angelou, and her autobiography, I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings. Maya Angelou was born on April 4, 1928, and her name was Margaret Ann Johnson. But for her brother used to call her sweet sister Maya in her childhood, and for some theatrical purposes, she gave the name Maya Angelou, and thus she became popular as Maya Angelou. So she had also had the honor of making an inaugural recitation when President Clinton assumed office. As you know, Afro-American writers express themselves through different genres of literature such as fiction, non-fiction, poetry, autobiographies, and others. They deal with issues such as race, gender, and class. So right from the beginning of slavery, African American women were caught between racism and sexism, and they had to bear the oppression from both white as well as black men. So they used to work in the plantation, and the plantation owners used to exploit them, exploit their skills and physical strengths by employing them as slaves. When we go through the writings of Afro-American women, we find that they have delved deep into the psyche of black women based on their personal experience, and they have created memorable characters. Many of them used autobiography to trace the quest for self-fulfillment and liberation in the society where women are considered as vehicles of burden and pleasure. So, Maya Angelou is an author, poet, dancer, singer, playwright, editor, and songwriter. So, this is Maya Angelou, and she has written various autobiographies like Gather Together in My Name, Swinging and Getting Merry Like Christmas, The Heart of a Woman, All God's Children Need Traveling Shoes, a song flung up to heaven. Today we'll discuss her most popular autobiography, I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings. So this autobiography presents the story of a versatile genius, Maya Angelou, who became a victim of racism, and she emerged as a phenomenal woman. And it speaks about the longing of lonely children, complexity of familial relationship, and struggle to overcome racism and prejudice. Though it was written 40 years ago, it is relevant even today because of its universal concerns. The autobiography begins with the self-portrait of Maya. She recalls her childhood in stamps, and before that she talks about her divorced parents and how they sent her to live with their grandmother, Mrs. Annie Henderson, at the age of 3. So no one accompanied them. The porter abandoned the children, that is she and her brother, and when they reached their destination, there was a piece of paper tucked on their bodies regarding their destination. So thus, at the age of 3, they struggled with the pain of having been rejected and abandoned by their parents. So the grandmother Annie Henderson, who was a strong and powerful woman, she had chosen the road less taken by. That is, usually the black women, they went to work in the plantations, cotton plantations, but she started a store. So she taught the children major lessons in life, and Maya drew strength from her grandmother to endure the hardships of life. So at the early age, she experienced segregation. So she considered herself ugly and inferior to white girls when she was unable to finish reciting a poem in the church. So she had a black and she had dark skin, and she had kinky hair and was large for her age. So she had already begun to equate beauty with whiteness, a sign that racism was rampant in the society in which she grew up, and that infiltrated into her mind. Secondly, uprooted and sent away by the parents at the age of 3, Maya had trouble throughout her life, feeling that she belonged anywhere or she had come to stay. And often, so her life with a grandmother was associated with the store of her grandmother. She always used to watch the cotton pickers going for work early in the morning and full of energy, but they used to drag themselves in the evening. That is very tired. So she understood that only the whites are entitled of all the luxuries in life and blacks are meant for meager works. And at the age of 8, their father once again comes to take the children, and he takes them to live with their mother Vivian. Though she was not interested to see her mother, and she also found difficult to adjust to urban life, but still she spent her time reading books. And Vivian was a beautiful, unconventional, bold woman, but she had a living relationship with a man called Mr. Freeman. So Maya also started having an emotional attachment with Mr. Freeman, but it resulted in Mr. Freeman raping her daughter. So when the truth surfaced before all, she had to undergo a testimony of an open courtroom full of shame and guilt. So she gave her testimony, but she chose to remain silent most of the time, remembering the moments which she had spent with Mr. Freeman when she had desired the intimacy. Later, Freeman was found murdered, and though she was guilty of that, she blamed herself for that, and though her family supported her, she went to a long silence. She stopped talking to everyone. So then she was once again taken to her grandmother, and her grandmother entrusted her under the care of Mrs. Bertha Flass, who nursed Maya by reading books to her and encouraging her to speak through the world of literature. So even at an early age, she started reading novels, poetry and Shakespeare, and lessons on deportment and avoidance of troubles with wine. So she describes various such incidents in the autobiography. One of such incidents is she goes to work for a white woman, and that white woman, instead of calling her Maya, calls her Mary. So Maya considered naming as a sensitive issue because she considered her name as a sense of identity in a hostile world that aims to stereotype blacks and erase their individuality and identity. So that's why, as a protest, she drops a fine china and she leaves the job. Another important incident she describes is her grandmother takes her to a black dentist when she had a toothache, and that dentist he was a white man, he insults her, saying he would rather place his hand in a dog's mouth than in hers. So such various incidents are described by Maya in the autobiography. So once again at the age of 13, the family moves to live with her father in Los Angeles, that is she and her brother. There she finds that her father has married to another woman called Mrs. Cliddle, and they moved to San Francisco, and that was the first city where Maya feels at home. But what happens so first she goes to San Francisco, then she spends her one summer with her father and Bailey in Los Angeles, and then she experiences a cruel indifference and from her hostile stepmother Dolores. And she struggles a lot to adjust with the father and his girlfriend, and there was a fight, and Maya runs away from that place, and she happens to come in contact with a group of homeless teenagers in a junkyard, and she lives with them for a month. So there she experiences that, or she finds that all human beings are the same. Everywhere in their lives, people have their own share of loneliness, sadness, and hopes. So the most pivotal question for Maya was to know herself. So her growing independence and awareness also led to a final crisis of her youth. She was anxious about her sexuality, and that led to an affair with her boy from her neighborhood, and it was an experiment, and she got pregnant at such an early age. So she hid this from her everyone, this pregnancy. About, she didn't talk about a pregnancy from everyone, even her mother. But her mother came to know about this, and she supported her, and the birth of her son brought her much closer to the reality and new responsibilities. With that, she embraced her role as a young mother with the support of her mother. So done she has done various jobs as a streetcar conductor. She has worked, and she has worked as a producer, editor, a television host of documentaries and educational film, and a university teacher. And returning to United States, her friend forced her to write about her life experiences, and this resulted in I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings. And for this, it was the first non-fiction bestseller by an African American woman. So after publishing Caged Bird, Angelou continued to break new ground. She became the first Afro-American woman to have a screenplay produced. She earned a Tony Award nomination and an Emmy Award nomination. Angelou wrote many autobiographies throughout her career, but I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings continues to be regarded as a most popular autobiographical work. So this is an example. So like Maya Angelou, thousands of other terrified black children made the same journey. And but the towering character of black woman should be seen as a predictable outcome of a hard-fought struggle. So Maya is a respected as a spokesperson for black people and the and everyone, and her works have been considered as a defense of black culture. So Angelou painted a single life, and the title of autobiography seems to be apt, as she herself was a survivor from racism. So Angelou's critic John M. Baxter stated that The Caged Bird was perhaps the most aesthetically pleasing autobiography written by an African American woman in its era. By the end of her first autobiography, Maya had freed herself from the cage, and she celebrated her womanhood. So she emerged as a phenomenal woman, and her phenomenal woman is another important poem. So she has written various poems also, and this is about her autobiography, I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings. Thank you.